next we have consideration of a resolution regarding railroad crossings. Let's see. Do we have someone presenting on this?
No, not necessarily. Hi,
Okay.
Emily Smith, Austin Transportation, staff liaison to the Mobility Committee. So staff from Public Works and Austin Transportation are here to answer your questions on this topic, but I
Okay.
did want to note, I believe the chair was interested in hearing from leadership from the Bicycle Advisory Council and Pedestrian Advisory Council who approved recommendations regarding this topic, and those folks are here and they have a hard stop at 2:30.
Okay. Well, let's, if y'all want to come up, let me just lay this out. And what this is, folks, is there was a recommendation. You know, we had some conversation about thinking about whether we wanted to have conversations about recommendations that came from different committees and commissions. So this was a recommendation of our Pedestrian Advisory Council, and it's something that I wanted to bring forward. So it's on this agenda today for y'all's consideration, and basically it is. It's a resolution to ask our staff to review railroad crossings, to consider for improvements for safety reasons, to consider things like prioritizing and determining what mitigation is needed, including cost estimates, and then coming back in December with recommendations about how those safety improvements might be addressed. So the resolution doesn't earmark any dollars at this point. It just focuses on these safety issues. So if you guys want to speak to that for just a second or a few minutes.
I'm Catherine Flowers. I'm the chair of the Bicycle Advisory Council. I've been on the body for about 5 years, so we have a long history with this concern. Tommy Eden, who's also here today, a longtime advocate in the bicycle community, had a concern that he had brought up several times related to some specific railroad crossings. I believe Vinson Street, Mary are a couple of examples. And these are crossings that are substandard in a lot of different ways for pedestrians and cyclists. As the city has grown, there's more and more people trying to use them, and they're really creating a dangerous situation. And so it came before the Bicycle Advisory Council. I believe it was in October of 2018. That sounds right to me. And we discussed it as an item, heard a little bit about the concerns from the community. We had a lot of people come out, especially from the Vinson Street crossing as a specific concern. But it's really railroad crossings across the city. Essentially what you're seeing is because the crossing has been in place for quite a while, the railroad has not replaced it. There's no pedestrian facilities, no bicycle facilities. It's just you encounter the crossing and you have to go across it as it is. Obviously, for people in wheelchairs, this is a concern. It means that sometimes you have to enter the right-of-way, so you're coming out of whatever safe area you were in, if there was one, into direct car traffic. The crossings are at an angle sometimes, which can be very problematic as you're crossing on wheels. And bike wheels can get caught in things. So there's a lot of issues related to the railroad crossings that can cause safety concerns. And we would just like to see some improvements there specifically from the city, because it can be in areas where you have consistent access, and that railroad crossing is that one big barrier, and some of them are in really poor condition to the point of if it rains and it's maybe mud or gravel, you can't even get across it in a safe fashion, especially if you're in a wheelchair or using a mobility device. I don't know if, Jay, you want to speak to the PAC?
Hi, Jay Blazer-Crossley, chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Council. And yeah, so we also consider this and support this, basically what the BAC is saying, and a couple parts of our discussion, especially emphasizing the people using wheelchairs or abilities, having safe ability to access the other side of the tracks is, I think, very important. And a key there is it's a safety issue, like that sometimes these treatments cause someone in a wheelchair to go out into the car lane to get across the tracks and then go back. A couple other key things but also consider, I think we should systematically improve these places and have good sidewalks for everyone to safely cross. And I guess that part of our discussion is talked about there are federal programs that could help. There's the quiet zones concept, and my experience in Houston, that was used a lot, and that people really like those things, because the quiet zone concept is you improve all the railroad crossings along a stretch to be so safe that they don't have to blow the horn. And then everyone who sleeps there enjoys that part of it. But also, more importantly, you can use that federal money to improve all the safety of the crossings. And so that part of our discussion really led to this. This is really a regional question. And is this a sort of something that maybe Campo could lead on? Could this be a regional railroad crossing? How do we fix this? How do we get the freight operators to play along with all the jurisdictions? And so we wanted to encourage you guys to work with your partners, including all the railway right-of-way owners, to try to solve these issues. So I think that was all our ideas.
Okay. All right. Do any of you all have questions for the commissions? Okay. I mean, we can talk about this, but do you have questions for them? Or?
Well, I just don't know where this list of crossings came from. Did that come from?
Yeah, can you help us with that?
Sure. So the list of crossings came from, so initially Tommy Eden, who's here, had brought up a few specific crossings that were emblematic of the problem. So again, not necessarily exhaustive in any way, just a few crossings that had been brought up to him or he had experienced. We then, in the course of taking up the item, had other people come up and say, I have a real problem with this specific crossing. Here's images of it. This is what I'm encountering. I mean, it's a crowdsourced list, basically, of things that were coming up again and again, but it is not exhaustive. It certainly is not they're not the only railroad crossings that are problematic.
Which I'll just say part of our discussion at the PAC was about that. And like in an ideal scenario, everything in life should be like the sidewalk master plan with a good map that uses data to prioritize and uses equity to prioritize those things. So in an ideal world, we would have some process to really understand the greatest need and prioritize the greatest need. But we support, these are the spots everybody knows are bad. So,
I mean, I don't know that,
yeah.
right? Because
yeah.
neither of these committees are appointed by the council.
Yeah.
And so they're not geographically representative. I don't have a D6 person on these councils. I don't know that they're, and crowdsourcing is not how we do business. So I need a process that takes equity into account. I need a process that does those things. I'm not hearing, I mean, I could ask staff if they think this is the appropriate list. And I understand that at the top it says including but not limited to, but I also know how staff treats a resolution when there's a bulleted list. Those are the ones that they get to first, and by the time they get to the third one out of 6, we've sent them 3 more resolutions on other things, and they're off working on that. So, I mean, this isn't about the challenge, right? This is a problem when you solve it. How are we to know that these are the 6 that should be listed, as opposed to asking staff to come back with a list?
Well, first off, it doesn't do that. What the first be it resolved is a resolution that identifies some areas that need to be looked at. The second be it resolved talks about the kind of analysis that needs to occur, which includes determining what mitigation is needed, prioritizing the challenges. So absolutely, we need to be doing what we've always said, which is looking at the area of greatest need. I hear your concern about perhaps there's other areas that should be on this list. This resolution is intended to be open and to allow for that. So as part of this conversation, we can certainly identify other areas. We can also certainly make sure that the language says, it does say review the above identified and other railroad crossings in the city. So we can certainly get more specific about that, because the intent is not to, and we've had conversations with other resolutions, the intent is not to put a particular place over and above other places that are higher priorities. So the intent is simply to say, we know these are problems. There's probably other areas that are problems. Let's pay some attention to them and see what needs to be done. Let's prioritize, and then let's come back and see, do they fit within existing projects? If not, how can we put them on the list to be considered for funding? So I agree with you, and I would not support something that was trying to jump areas out of line in terms of what the priorities are.
Would it be satisfactory to just remove the list?
No, and the reason it would not be for me is because these are areas that we know are difficulties. For example, the Stasny Lane near Aikens High School. We've had an accident there with someone in a wheelchair. So we know that these are issues. Now, we can certainly work on language that makes it doubly, triply clear that these are not to go above any other areas that the staff may identify or may know about. But I think it's useful to reflect what we understand and maybe we put them in the whereas or whatever, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I don't have that same understanding. I don't understand how a frontage road of Mopac is on this list. It just certainly is, and when you look at where that is on the map, that's not a very frequented pedestrian crossing, and if it is, God help us all, because it's not great. I can't support this if there's a list, because I understand what you're saying, but I also know how staff takes these.
Okay.
And if I vote yes, they're going to think that I'm saying these are the six that have to go first, and I'm not I'm not prepared to do that. I'm not
Okay.
even sure that it's our job to do that.
Okay. Other questions, or did you have?
I had a similar concern, although I don't know that I need to go quite as far on that. I just wanted to bring up I wanted to well, I was going to ask the same question about where the list came from. I had one in my head that just, like, given what you said, seems to me like I haven't ridden my bike over it, but at airport in North Lamar, which is not in my district, but it's just kind of this weird crossing with a transit station there, that would be another one that maybe we very much need to look at. And it probably has a lot of slightly different issues than some of the other ones, but it's one that I would like to see looked at if we are going to have a list, unless you know that that's not a problem.
I'd like to take a minute and call up the staff. I think Nathan Wilkes is here.
Can I just really quickly say, Captain Metro did just actually put some money into that one and
Okay.
fix the sidewalk a little bit. It's not, but anyway, so it's important to note that Cap Metro has done some improvements to some of these.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have staff here?
And I will note there's one speaker signed up for this topic, Tommy Eden.
Okay. So, hi. Okay, well, whoever wants to answer a question. So my question is simply that goes to the concerns that is raised about places and the importance of, this is designed and written to ensure there's an analysis and process and a prioritization process, and not designed to short circuit that process. So can someone just speak to how you might proceed in terms of analyzing the needs at the railroad crossings and speak to this, what's in this resolution?
It might be worth mentioning from the start that I think there's both bicycle and pedestrian issues that are
Okay.
a bit different.
Okay.
Both from a prioritization perspective and what safety means, like from an infrastructure perspective. They may share a solution like the Mopac frontage road maybe has a shared use path right next to it. That's Mopac built a shared use path, but it ends on the southbound frontage road right before there. So maybe a shared use path across that crossing is the best solution. So that could be a case where bicycle and pedestrian solutions look the same. On the Rosewood one, there's a bicycle lane there and a sidewalk. Neither of them have a proper angle for the crossing. So
Okay.
just as a preface. And then I'm not aware that there's been a comprehensive, so I'll say I can speak for the bicycle side most
Okay.
fluently, and then Public Works probably can best speak to the sidewalk side. I'm not aware of a comprehensive analysis that's been done across all railroad crossings.
Okay.
And I think we could speculate what that might look like.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathan. Richard Mendoza, Public Works Director. I'm also joined by my Assistant Acting Director, Bruce Moyne, and John Eastman with the Sidewalk Program. I'm pleased to report that, we are currently implementing a robust 2016 sidewalk improvement bond-funded program. And in the course of implementing that program, of course, we developed the project location list in accordance with the sidewalk master plan, with the view of equity throughout the city to meet the most very high and high priority locations, which we have set the criteria together, being around parks and entertainment centers, schools and whatnot. And we actually, where those high and very high priority program sidewalk improvements intersect with rail crossings, we do an evaluation at those locations and anticipate affecting the safe crossing for pedestrians with that sidewalk project. In fact, we currently have 7 such locations in the plans now, And some of these lists of locations have actually been brought to our attention. We've done some preliminary evaluation of those. The ones that are listed here, the 6, they range in priority from medium to very high. They also have a variety of different design challenges in terms of required right-of-way and utilities obstacles to affect that. But essentially, going forward, we are going to continue on our program, and we do invite working with the PAC and BAC on whatever specific concerns they might have on certain locations as we proceed with the implementation of the bond sidewalk program.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Go ahead.
I did. Is there a best practices for things like railroad crossings, or are we kind of just dealing with something that was already built that didn't necessarily need bicycle and pedestrian evaluations done that now we're trying to retrofit? Or do we not have this is a good angle for bicycles to be crossing standard?
From a bicycle perspective, as perpendicular as possible with 45 is like an important, in the AASHTO kind of guidance, okay. 45 degrees is a kind of minimum bar. And then I think from there you get into how substandard and how big is the problem to fix it.
Right.
And all those are very unique. Like the Vinson location, we flat just don't have right of way. Probably the best solution is the abandonment of the Bergstrom spur and realigning that roadway to be straight, given how constrained that right of way is. So, does that make sense?
And not every street was built with the intention of having those extra lanes for bicycle or shared use.
Or an appropriate crossing angle for a sidewalk or a bicycle lane or a shared use path.
Okay, that makes sense. And then is this part of the transportation criteria manual, which my understanding is it's still being updated and we haven't seen the new recommendations?
I'm not aware that this specific issue is spoken to directly. I think oftentimes if there's clear national guidance, we just defer to that.
Okay, thanks.
Likewise, on the sidewalk design standards, we follow the AASHTO, which are the national design standards for safe crossings of railroad at-grade crossings. When we speak with Union Pacific many times, it's been my experience that they really prefer grade separations at all possible for all crossings to include vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycle which is very expensive.
Okay, we don't currently have any municipal standards that are more stringent than what the national standards would allow for?
Not that I'm aware. No.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank y'all very much. This is a resolution I personally am interested in bringing forward, and will continue to work on the questions that people have raised. And thank you, Councilmember Alter, for bringing that to an attention, and thank you, Councilmember Flanagan. You've raised good questions. And so I wanted to let I'm sorry. We did have one person sign up. I did want to let everybody know that it is my intention to bring a resolution forward. But go ahead, Mr. Eden, if you want to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Tommy Eden. I did bring this to the Bicycle Advisory Council and presented it to the Pedestrian Advisory Council. It also has support from Bike Austin as well as Walk Austin and ADAPT. I wanted to give you a little bit of history on this. I'm looking at the list of bicycle facility priorities from 1998, the Bicycle Advisory Council. Sixth priority is railroad crossing signs for bicycles requiring unusual maneuvers. On this, and there's a list of them, and on this list is Vinson and Mary Street. So this is not something that's just recent. Mm-hmm. When Rosewood was resurfaced a few years later, I asked the city staff if they could make significant improvements to allow bicyclists to cross the tracks at a perpendicular angle, and that was not done at that time. As it turns out, the city is required to get federal approval to make changes to the crossings. And that's why it's such a difficult problem. Besides the fact that, for instance, at Vinson, there's not enough right-of-way. This would be a very relatively expensive project because if a whole separate path needs to be built, that can incur significant costs. So several other crossings have been added since I presented this, and I'm glad to see as many important safety improvements as can be done to make the city safe for bicyclists crossing. Not just bicyclists, but especially wheelchairs. I mean, we share a lot of the same problems between bicyclists crossing the tracks and wheelchairs on the sidewalk, not being able to cross in a safe angle, and anything that has narrow tires is going to have some challenges crossing these tracks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank everyone that's been involved with this for bringing this to our attention. We'll continue to have conversations, and we'll proceed with it.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Just as we've been through this type of situation so many times, my instinct, myself included, absolutely want to make these changes. We want to make these fixes, especially for folks in wheelchairs and ADA compliance issues. But there is just a process question around equity and choosing the projects and that kind of stuff, and that's the part we just got to work through.
Yeah, I think we can work through that, and we can make it clear when we end up bringing some language that we've addressed those concerns. So, all right, thank you all. Let's see. So.